Mm. Settling into your meditation posture. And just seeing how your body is aligned. Most of us, on these calls, we tend to maybe sit in less formal ways than we might if we were in a meditation hall. It's fine. Just to see how you're holding your body. One of the things we start to learn when we meditate regularly is the habitual tendencies of our body, of our posture. If you're someone who tends to be very erect or very tense, or someone who tends to slump, these things show up, and we can use them in a positive way just to kind of remind ourselves to try to maintain some alignment. And you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. And besides feeling the way you're holding your body, feeling your body as an energetic field, just all the life that's in your body, the energy, the warmth and coolness, the streams of energy that the nervous system communicating sensations. When we start to explore the body, we discover this whole world. So much happening, actually. If we had any real capacity to be aware of the whole functioning of the body, then we'd really be busy trying to follow all that digestion and cells being born and dying, oxygen flowing through the blood. So just tuning in to whatever you can feel. A great way to arrive in our meditation. Not trying to make anything happen, but just feeling yourself embodied. There's an instruction that some of the teachers have been using that's in the Satipatthana, the Foundations of Mindfulness. The simplest of instruction, that's to know there is a body. To know there is a body. And as I've been kind of pointing people towards lately, is to see if you can connect that awareness of the body to the felt mood in the body. The kind of, say mood or emotion. The two are closely related. I think of the mood as being something more general, where an emotion tends to be more sort of intense or kind of maybe more momentary, more sort of bright or dark, but something that really asserts itself. But even when there isn't a really strong emotion like that, you can feel mood, because I think that we're always in some mood. Don't know if there's science on that, but it's how it seems to me that if I stop and turn inward, there's always this felt experience of my mind, heart, mind, and it again is tied in with the body. It's not really separable from the body. And when I kind of merge my awareness of body and mood, it actually helps to have a more integrated awareness. It's not so much that we're trying to separate different elements of experience in that way, but kind of seeing everything as part of one system. And that then becomes easy to bring in breath. Obviously, breath is in the body, but a more specific area of sensation than just generally feeling the body. But to hold the whole body with the breath and the mood, and feeling the movement of breath in that, that feels like you're really here, all of you, every part of you. The one thing that does seem to be separate from that is the thoughts. And maybe they're not, but there's a way in which we give a kind of priority to thoughts that makes them at least seem to be really separate from our body and our mood. We can see that there's an interplay and a relationship. But when we get caught up in either words in the mind, conversation in the mind, or images, or sort of projections, it's almost as if we go into a different body, into a different space. It's kind of cut off from the rest of our sense experience. Suzuki Roshi has an interesting way of addressing thoughts where he's trying to let them be more integrated into experience, where he says not to try to get rid of them or suppress them or push them away. He says, let them come and let them go. I think of that as a kind of just allowing. I think it presupposes that we are still aware of the body as we let these thoughts come and go. And then it becomes like thoughts become, as we say, like clouds moving through the sky. So maybe that's a way to integrate thoughts into this wholeness, body and mind. As we become more comfortable with this practice, just as Suzuki Roshi says, we're not so disturbed by the fact that there are thoughts passing through. We actually develop the capacity to feel the breath even as there's a certain amount of mental noise. And we can use the breath in its calming capacity. Letting the exhalation settle the body. So again, the breath and body, the whole body, are connected in this way. We see how the breath affects the whole body, affects the energy in the body. And we have to be careful that we're not sort of striving to control the experience, make it be a certain way. But it's more that we just, as we say, incline the mind, and really inclining the breath and body towards calm. We're kind of creating the space for that to happen. Then we're kind of turning it over to the process, letting go of the results. Sometimes stillness and quiet will come over us. Sometimes it won't. That's what we don't control. And it's not helpful to get into a kind of efforting, thinking if I just try harder, then I'll get what they're saying. I'll get that peace. Actually, it comes more when you try less hard. I would love to see if there were any just questions about meditation tonight. Anybody is brave enough to, speak up in this sort of intimidating uh, environment, where we're actually all friends. At least you're friends to me. You should be friends to each other. But it seemed like, I guess I particularly asked that because that was sort of a very different. I thought it was sort of a different meditation, guided meditation. I mean, it's always sort of similar, but just sometimes I'm curious, like how it hits people. Like, was that just annoying because I was talking a whole lot for the beginning, or did it hit? Did anything kind of come through that was interesting or different or helpful, confusing? Susan, you going to say something? Yeah, go ahead. Oh, wait. I'm unmuting. Yes.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I found one part of it particularly helpful. It was the way you talked us into feeling the mood, the finding the difference between emotions and the feeling tone. And you kind of ended that passage, maybe you said something like, with the mood and the body and the breath, that tells you I'm here.
Yeah.
And I really felt that. And and it really strengthened my meditative energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
Good.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good. And I know that's one of those sort of simple ideas. I'm going to just tip myself down a little bit so there's not so much light there. It's one of those simple ideas, and sometimes just it's interesting. That's why you experiment with different sort of phrases in meditation. Sometimes they're just like triggering words or images that take you, because we all have this capacity, and particularly you guys, many of whom are very experienced meditators, we all have this capacity to kind of tune in, click in, but it doesn't always click, it just sort of like we're not there or whatever, we're spacing out or we're stressed or whatever it is, but sometimes just like the right word. And I do like, you've probably heard me use the expression arriving. I've used that at times about, and that's kind of what I was thinking about, that arriving. That's just immediacy of just being here, and it's like simple. I mean, if you told somebody, oh yeah, this meditation teacher said, like, just just being here, and they'd be like, yeah, and so what? Like, but yeah, because you are of course primed to get that and to be kind of triggered into that.
I was very primed, sort of in the, it reminded me that I'm doing Satipatthana meditation,
Yeah.
and all those things are here together, and I'm here. It was a very focusing phrase. And at the same time, I could then begin to kind of disperse and think, but what am I really? And just breathe. Just, it was really helpful.
Yeah, good. Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
So really nice to have you here. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else have, I've got a whole package of entertainment tonight, so don't worry. But and if there are any other questions or comments, and you can.
Hi, it's Anne.
Oh, great.
Hi, Kevin.
Yeah. Hi.
Hi. The phrase "there is a body."
Yeah.
That's it.
Have you heard that one? Have you heard?
I have heard that one. I've heard, but not in a while. I've heard Joseph Goldstein.
Yeah.
but tonight it really resonated. I've been doing a lot of qigong, and so I'm very much present in my body.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's great. It's really helpful for meditation. More the two together is a really beautiful practice.
Yeah.
So just this, it's a very focusing. It's I'm here. It's I'm arrived. There is a body. There is a body. It's very grounding and helpful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just, while you were saying that, I decided to get out the Majjhima Nikaya where that shows up. So because it's interesting how this is sort of expressed in the sutta. So it's in the section of the sutta that they call the insight. So that there's the four foundations of mindfulness, and each of them, there's insights that are sort of tied in with each of them. And of course, the Buddha didn't say, "Oh, here's the insight section" when he spoke them, but this is how they've been compiled. And the line, the way it's delivered, it says it gives a variety of things. In this way, he, the meditator, so forgive the gender, but in this way he abides, or one abides, contemplating the body as a body, internally, externally, contemplating the body, its arising factors, so it's and its vanishing factors, which means like to pay attention to the impermanent nature. And then it says, or else mindfulness that, quote, there is a body, unquote, is firmly established to the extent necessary for bare knowledge and mindfulness. So I bring that up because it's kind of striking that, well, we see it in the sutta and other places, but it's like the Buddha is saying, essentially, say this to yourself, right? Because he's putting it in quotes. He's saying, or else mindfulness that, quote, there is a body. So it's like it's a mantra you can use. It's meant to be. I think that's how I've understood the way teachers have communicated it. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was interesting. But yeah.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah. Which sutta? That Satipatthana.
Yeah, it's the Satipatthana,
it's in there,
which is the number 10 in the
number 10
in the Majjhima Nikaya. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Kevin, I was wondering, what are the benefits of group meditation as opposed to individual? I mean, I live in a small town in Illinois, and so there are no meditation groups anywhere near me. So I've been meditating myself for a long time. Mm-hmm. And what am I missing? I mean, it seems like something to do with energy, the group energy, but what am I missing by not having a group, a sangha?
Well, I think it's different, and other people could sort of chime in on this, but I'd say, yeah, there's and I'm not too into, there's this magical energy in the air when all these people are together, but just in terms of there is a different feeling when you're with people, even when your eyes are closed. So to some extent, there's more self-consciousness, and there's also like more noise around you of people making, but oftentimes if there's a teacher, then you're kind of getting some guidance, which is always nice. And, if there's questions or there's a talk, all of that I think is valuable. But community, I think it's kind of like, we can compare it to the difference between getting sober with just the big book or going to meetings. It's different. It's great to have support and friends who share the path with you. And rather than saying like, oh, the experience of meditating is magically different, it's more to me about that community and being part of something and feeling that support, and then having people you can connect with and have a relationships with.
Thank you.
Other people might say, I mean, I know there are people who are very more sensitive to energy, and like the kind of spiritual energy that I am, who will say, yeah, like, wow, it's really different. And people will say, you go into a meditation hall, like Spirit Rock or some dramatic place, and people will be like, oh, you can really feel it in here. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's real or if it's just a projection, but I guess it doesn't matter. If you feel it, it's real, even if you're projecting it, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So, all right, I will get on to the topic of the evening. And I'm going to talk a little bit on the sutta tonight too. I'm on the section of One Breath at a Time in step 2, page 46, called How Can I Believe? It's a nice short section, and it's all just, there's no stories in it, which is sort of a relief to me. I get people, we all like stories, but I don't like reading my stories out loud. Anyway, not your problem. So we're in step 2, and this was sort of like talking about Buddhism and belief. I only highlighted a few spots, but a lot of it seems worth reading. So I'll read this from the beginning. Buddhism offers a safe way to approach faith. The Buddha invited people to, quote, come and see, unquote, ehipassiko, which is the Pali. Come and see for yourself. In the same way, 12-step programs don't recruit members, but use their members' success in dealing with addiction to speak for itself, a policy called attraction rather than promotion. Nobody's trying to sell you something with Buddhism with the 12 steps, hopefully. Quite literally, since both are primarily supported by donation, but rather they invite you to see how they work for others and yourself before making a commitment. So, it's always seemed evident to me that one of the things that makes Buddhism particularly appealing in contemporary Western culture is this lack of what we would call, a faith. It's not a faith-based religion. There isn't some dogma that you have to believe in order to participate. There's no sort of hurdles that you have to climb over, and so that in an era of, the very strongly inclining towards a secular era and scientific era, people, certainly many of us, have a hard time with some of the, religions that demand sort of faith, and as I like to say, they ask you to believe in things that are unbelievable, which doesn't mean things aren't true that seem unbelievable. I mean, I won't say it, but I was going to make a, Trump joke. So anyway, it's unbelievable that he got elected, but he got elected anyway. So there you go. I said it. It's, but there's a sense with Buddhism that it's like, oh, I can come and I can meditate and it kind of makes sense. It's not like, magical thinking. And then I don't have to like buy into it all necessarily. The truth is, if you get really into traditional Buddhism, there's a lot that requires faith, particularly reincarnation, for instance. But it's also, it seems that you can kind of practice Buddhism and follow its principles and all of that without taking on that belief. And in fact, the Buddha actually addresses that. He actually addresses it in the sutta I was going to talk about tonight. So Yeah, I'll read one more paragraph, and then I'm going to go to the sutta that because I talk about here the Kalama Sutta. So I pulled out that sutta, but for over on page 47, it says the Buddha takes away many of the standard routes to faith: scripture, tradition, logic, authority. And what he says then is that if you want to know the value of a teacher's offering, you have to try it out and see what the results are. If the results are good, keep it up. If not, drop it. So I'd actually rather read the sutta that talks about this. And so what I'm referring to is what's traditionally called the Kalama Sutta. And so the Kalamas were a community. Well, I'll put in, it's in the Anguttara Nikaya. I'll put that in the, for those who are studying suttas. This is the numerical discourses, and it's in the 365, 3:65. So the Kalamas were like a tribe or a community who were visited by many gurus, and that was the way it was apparently in India in those days. And they were confused because everyone, I'll read this little part that they say. They refer to the Buddha as Bhante, which is kind of a respectful way to speak to a monk. They say, Bhante, there are some ascetics and Brahmins. So those are two different, like the ascetics are ones who are more trying to live a very simple existence. And then Brahmins are following the more traditional Hindu-like teachings. This is kind of pre-Hindu. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who come to Kesaputta, to their town. They explain and elucidate their own doctrines, but disparage, denigrate, deride, and denounce the doctrines of others. But then some other ascetics come, and they too explain and elucidate their doctrines, but they disparage, denigrate, deride, and denounce the doctrines of others. We are perplexed and in doubt, Bhante, as to which of these good ascetics speak truth and which speak falsehood. So, it's a great question, right? So the Buddha says, it is fitting for you to be perplexed, Kalamas, fitting for you to be in doubt. Doubt has arisen in you about a perplexing matter. It's great that he immediately, he goes along with them. He's like, yeah, that is confusing. At least people come and they say, I've got the answer. We all know about this, right? My path is the one way, follow me. And then, don't listen to those people. And then you go listen to that person. They're like, my path is the one way. Just don't listen to that person over there. And you're like, well, how am I supposed to figure it out? So here the Buddha says, do not go by oral tradition, by lineage of teaching, by hearsay, by a collection of scriptures, by logical reasoning, by inferential reasoning, by reasoned cogitation, by the acceptance of a view after pondering it, by the seeming competence of a speaker, or because you think the ascetic is our guru. So these are all the ways that you're not supposed to necessarily believe something. And Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's the translator of this, divides this into three categories. There's the tradition, there's the types of reasoning, and there's personal authority. That's a good way to kind of simplify it. Like, just don't believe it just because it's a tradition, and don't believe it just because they make a good argument, which is very interesting, I think. And then personal authority, the charisma of the guru. I particularly like the one about the types of reasoning, the logic, where he says, by logical reasoning, because, our culture particularly sort of holds up logic as the answer to everything. Well, it's logical. But then we see that two lawyers can go into court and argue opposite ends of a case using logic, right? And we just see that logic is like very manipulable, if I said that right. So, of course, the question comes, well, okay, we're not supposed to believe it because of the tradition, because it's logical, because of the authority, the charisma of the teacher. Well, what are we supposed to do? And the Buddha says, uh, when you know, I have to jump ahead where he says this. When you know for yourselves, these things are wholesome, these things are blameless, these things are, I'm sorry, they're praised by the wise. These things are wholesome, these things are blameless, these things are praised by the wise. These things, if accepted and undertaken, lead to welfare and happiness. Then you should live in accordance with them. And in the course of this, he refers to the 5 precepts, where he says, a person without greed does not, so he's talking about greed, hatred, and delusion, like that these are like the 3 things that will tell you. So if somebody is without greed, then they do not destroy life, take what is not given, transgress with another's wife, so the sexual misconduct, or speak falsehood. So actually he just gives the 4 precepts, first 4 precepts. And that's because the 5th precept of not using intoxicants isn't considered to be a moral transgression, whereas the first 4 are, which is another, topic for another time, especially for us addicts. So, what he's saying that, like, you should see whether what this practice you're doing leads to breaking the precepts. Is it inspiring greed, hatred, or delusion? He says, one who is overcome by greed destroys life, takes what is not given, transgresses with another's wife, and speaks falsehood, encourages others to do likewise. Sounds kind of familiar. And he asked them, like, if somebody does that, will that lead to their harm? So he's like not even telling them what to believe. He's just saying, like, if people behave like this, what happens? And the Kalamas go, yeah, no, that's going to harm people. Just to this is the kind of the key principle, and you'll often see this sutta referred to talk about how everybody sort of has to find their own path. And I think it's really important not to go too far with that idea. It's a very tempting idea, particularly in our culture, which is a very individualistic culture, to say, oh, well, everybody has to figure out what's right for themselves. The Buddha's not really saying that. He's saying, first of all, like, does it have these effects? Does it wind up harming people? Does it inspire greed, hatred, and delusion? Does it inspire people to be, steal and to kill? But there's also this key phrase where he says, this path that you're considering should be praised by the wise. So, key idea, right? So for all that he's saying, you should kind of watch and decide for yourself. At the end of all that, he's also saying, but don't just go by your own, take on it, because we know how much we can deceive ourselves. As much as we think, oh, I'm just doing what I think is right. It's like, and that, which again, bringing back to recovery, it's such a great, have a good sponsor functions in very much this way for us. I mean, how many times, I don't know how many of you have had good sponsors. I had a good one who would really, I would think that I had a good solution to a situation, or that I knew what I should do. And I would run it by him, and he would kind of be like, maybe not, and then he would be able to sort of point out to me what wasn't so smart about it. Or on the other hand, yes, give me, sort of affirm what I was thinking. And there was this way in which, I think that with a sponsor, with a teacher, with any spiritual guide, uh, to me, what we're trying to do is sort of not just learn from them about what to do in a particular moment, but to learn principles and start to, see how they operate. How do they think? How do they make decisions? And start to, incorporate that into our own way of being, right? Instead of just like following our old path. And, and that's, I mean, I don't really like to think of myself as some great example of enlightenment, but I do feel, a responsibility. Rather than thinking I'm teaching somebody, giving them information, I do prefer to think of my role as sort of showing you my thinking process and how I arrive at something, and how I understand meditation or how I understand this sutta. And then, that gives you like some ways to not necessarily copy that, but to like have that as, okay, there's one model. Does that work for me? And then you listen to different teachers and you hear different approaches. And eventually you kind of get your own sense of how to be, which is, again, going back to the sponsor relationship. It's another reason why at a certain point, I think, you don't necessarily need to have a sponsor. And I know that's not true for everybody. I have a dear friend who's been sober like 36 years now, I think. And she still has a sponsor and still works with a sponsor. And that's, that works for her. For me, I got to a point where I was like, I really don't feel like I need to check in with this person and kind of get their approval anymore. And as often happens in those relationships, they sort of developed a tension around that. But I still try to look to the whys, I still don't try to just make decisions completely on my own. And I'm fortunate that I have a very wise partner, so I often look to her for guidance. So, this whole question of faith, this is the kind of classic sutta that addresses this in Buddhism, but again, I think it's not quite as simplistic as it's sometimes portrayed to be. I will say that the sutta continues on, and what happens then is that the Buddha recommends practicing the 4 Brahma Viharas: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And he has this way of describing it. Well, I'll just read this little section. Then Kalama, that noble disciple, somebody who's been practicing this way, who is thus devoid of longing, devoid of ill will, unconfused, clearly comprehending, ever mindful, dwells pervading 1/4 with a mind imbued with loving kindness, dwells imbuing 1/4 with a mind imbued with compassion, and then dwells imbuing 1/4 with altruistic joy, with a mind and with a mind imbued with equanimity. And then he goes, likewise, the 2nd quarter, the 3rd quarter, and the 4th quarter. So this is this, I think, probably Brahminical way of like thinking about directions. Because he says, thus above and below, across and everywhere, to all as to himself. He dwells pervading the entire world with a mind imbued with equanimity, vast, exalted, measureless, without enmity, without ill will. So it's like I'm not sure what the quarters mean, but I think of it as like front, the 2 sides, the back, and then up and down. So it's probably maybe some of you know about this. It's it sounds like almost like some kind of one of the Chinese uh, or Hindu kind of ways of delineating space. And so I hope that's helpful. Certainly a great sutta to be aware of. And just for the sake of, I will type in the name of this is the traditional name of the sutta. It's actually not called that in the Anguttara, but Kalama is Kalama. And we had a florist up on Solano Avenue in Berkeley who was named Kalama. I was always curious if he was from that tribe. So any questions, any thoughts, any reflections? I'm putting in my Dana information in the meantime.
Yeah, Kevin, this is Meg.
Hi, Meg.
I just wanted to, hello. For some reason, I'm not getting what you're typing. I just wanted to know if you could retype the sutta number.
Sometimes I wind up, I did it privately. I'm sorry. Thank you for always remind me of that, right? If somebody sends me a message, then what happens is, like, if I think I'm typing to everybody. So, yeah, thank you, Mick. So I have to go back and catch all those things. Good catch. Okay, Anguttara Nikaya. And that's 365. It's like it's the Anguttara Nikaya is I misspelled it, of course, is numerical discourses. And there's the ones, the twos, the threes, the fours, up to 11. So these are the threes. It's number 65. I'm sure you can find it like in, what's called, what's that? Sutta? Well, anyway, there's a lot of suttas online. So if you just type in Kalama Sutta or Anguttara Nikaya, you got that now? Seeing it now? Excellent. Let me put in Dana information. And I want to thank, some people have been actually sending me money, so like in like paper form. So thank you for that. Thank you, Eleanor. You're always very generous. And so what was I going to say? Oh, just to let you know, a couple of things I've been getting into, because you know, there's so much happening online now that's like, you know, obviously you could be like meditating all. Oh, well, I misspelled Kevin Griffin. That's really bad. Try that again. This is my PayPal. A couple things that are, Gil Fronsdale, who I'm sure many of you know, he does something every morning for about 15 minutes that are, and I think they're on YouTube. I get him through as a podcast. And he's been, you know, he'll take up, like he did the Four Noble Truths and the Five Hindrances. Bhikkhu Bodhi is doing something once a week at his monastery, just a guided meditation. I went to on Wednesday, and he chants for about 10 or 15 minutes in Pali, and then he did a guided loving kindness meditation, which was, if you know who Bhikkhu Bodhi is, he's a hero of mine. So he's just to see him there. He's in upstate New York. Gil does 30-minute sit and 15-minute Dharma talk YouTube live stream. Oh, he does a 30-minute sit too, because I've just been getting the talk. Cool. And Ajahn Pasno, Walt Opie told me about this. This isn't live, but he did a series on the Anapanasati Sutta. Oh boy, I'm not going to type that in. Anyway, that's on YouTube. And it's kind of a guided meditation and kind of a Dharma talk at the same time. So it's one of those things, it's like 45 minutes. You can just put it on and he just talks about being mindful of breath. And then like the first one, there was a lot about posture and body. And then, he's going through the Anapanasati Sutta is the sutta on mindfulness of breathing. And there are 16 components to it. So he's going through all of those, and they lead to different, like what he got into rapture, which is called piti, and sukha, which are rapture and joy. And then today I was listening to one on the 5 hindrances, which is also kind of tied into the Anapana. So Ajahn Pasano is he's another one of our great elders. Though he's like a year older than me, so I don't know what that makes me. Just an old man, I think. But anyway, well, dears, thank you all for coming. Have a nice weekend, Friday night. I'll be back Tuesday morning, and there's just one more section of step 2, so we'll be venturing into step 3 by the end of next week, next Friday. And you're, as I, just to let you know, I'm around. You can always email me through my website. Hopefully, my website if you want to just be in touch. So hope everybody stays safe, stay well. The mantra today now, right? Stay safe, stay well.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Namaste.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you,
Thank
Kevin.
you very much, everybody.